Hello, my name is Jovan Dubuisson, and for my individual video presentation, I'm going to be comparing virtue ethics and the ACM code. Before you ask why I would compare these two things, let me explain what they are first. Virtue ethics, said succinctly, is an ethical approach which emphasizes morals as a way to achieve personal well-being, and the ACM code, uh, the Association of Computing Machinery's Code of Conduct, prescribes ethical standards by which its members and other computing professionals should abide by, hopefully. I'm comparing them because the ACM code was updated as of last year on July 17th due to the technological advancements that have taken place, affecting how ingrained computing is within society. And following that, I think it's important that the code continues to be reviewed towards the end of better highlighting flaws in it that exist, as well as getting a better understanding of more subtle facets of it. Uh, I'm going to be analyzing both subjects through their shared challenges, being specifically application of the principles as well as cultural relativity and how it affects them. Okay, in regards to the challenge of application, for virtue ethics, it is a critique brought onto it by utilitarians and deontologists, hinging upon the apparent lack of action guidance towards the moral character lauded by virtue ethics. The defense for this by virtue ethicists boils down to there actually existing a form of action guidance in the way of vice avoidance, just trying not to take on negative character traits such as disloyalty, dishonesty, etc. The critique in regards to application was based on a misunderstanding, which extends to the ACM's code of to the ACM and issues it may have with the application of its principles, and misunderstandings there. The issue in this respect would be separation of ethics from life, wherein ethics, once put on a piece of paper, so to speak, can be perceived by a professional as coming from a separated point of authority that isn't a part of life or normal activity, causing the professional to take on a defensive mindset in which their priority becomes more so avoiding negative attention for going against what is considered ethical, as opposed to uh, understanding the spirit of the ethics and applying them accordingly. Uh, the solution here is similar to the defense for virtue ethics in regards to application, which is just getting a better understanding of the code of conduct in this scenario, which for the ACM code includes knowing that it's more of a guideline for making ethical decisions more so than a rule set by which it should be strictly abided at all times. Moving on to the challenge of cultural relativity in virtue ethics and alongside other forms of normative ethics is just a general problem. The defense for it by virtue ethicists would be that despite there being cultural differences, virtues remain the same between cultures, and to an extent this is true, and while also being not true because there are shared virtues between cultures like courage, justice, and wisdom, although they manifest differently between cultures. This extends to the ACM code because similarly, it's a irreconcilable issue that can be taken advantage of in the ACM code's case. For the example of a principle that I would choose as protecting one's privacy. In the U.S., privacy is considered a right; it is respected, and if a professional wanted to go against that, could just eschew the guideline essentially and work in a country like China, where privacy is not treated as well, to the extent that the government has closed camera networks in major cities, monitored by tech companies, which go to the extent as to censor information. Okay, moving on. Okay, despite their similarities, these subjects differ fundamentally, primarily along the lines of virtue ethics being an ethical theory, while the code of ethics is, well, ACM code is a code of ethics. Virtue ethics lives and dies on its ideas, and despite being having objections thrown at it for years, whether they be valid or not, it's going to stay the same for the most part. Although its perception of it would change, while the ACM code is completely different. It sees functional use daily by computing professionals and constant review that can result in revision to it, given enough information has come into light. The secondary difference being that the ideals in either subject are treated differently. The ideal in virtue ethics being that being a totally virtuous person, which is rare if not impossible. So the acceptance that a person who is mostly virtuous is a thing. While in the ACM code, that is not the case. Ethical behavior is not treated as a good enough sort of deal. It's treated as professionals should be ethical in all circumstances, barring specific exceptions, and even given those exceptions, consequences should be expected, and accountability should still be taken. So, concluding my comparative analysis, despite their outward similarities, they differ in their usage as well as their methodology regarding ideals. That being said, though, virtue ethics and the arguments regarding its ethical theory are useful for a review of the ACM code by way of providing solutions to flaws within it, as well as highlighting problems that are irreconcilable.